The arena was electric, a vortex of energy swirling under the blinding glare of stadium lights. Fans roared from the rafters, their voices merging into a deafening cacophony of anticipation. This wasn't just a fight, it was a battle of worlds, an impossible clash of titans no one thought could ever materialize. Yet, here it was, unfolding before their eyes. On one side of the octagon stood Khabib Nurmagomedov, undefeated, stoic, and a master of discipline. His aura was like granite, unyielding, shaped by years of combat and unwavering faith. Across from him, in the opposing corner, was Muhammad Ali, the man who defied gravity and logic in equal measure. The ring was his stage, and his fists were the poetry that left entire generations spellbound. How had this happened? How had the two greatest fighters from completely different worlds, different times, come to face off under the same roof? The answer was as surreal as the moment itself. Months earlier, the world of combat sports had been shaken by an announcement no one could have seen coming. A groundbreaking technology, hidden from the public for years, had been quietly perfected, one capable of bending the limits of time itself. This wasn't just a scientific breakthrough, it was a Pandora's box, and once it was opened, there was no going back. Rumors swirled through the media like wildfire. Legendary figures from history could now stand shoulder to shoulder with modern-day icons. Skepticism ran high until the project was unveiled in dramatic fashion. The stage was set for the ultimate crossover, a test to determine not only who was the greatest fighter of all time, but also to answer an age-old question: what happens when two warriors, forged in the fire of completely different eras, collide? The hype was unprecedented, and the stakes couldn't have been higher. For Ali, this wasn't just a fight. It was his chance to prove his greatness in a world unrecognizable from his own. Stripped of the rules and traditions of boxing, he was stepping into a new battlefield, where grappling, submissions, and ground and pound reigned supreme. Many doubted whether the elegance and flair that once defined him would translate in the ruthless cage of mixed martial arts. For Khabib, it was an opportunity to solidify his legacy beyond the confines of his undefeated record. He was stepping into the realm of the mythical, squaring off against an opponent he'd studied as a child, but never imagined he'd ever face. The octagon had seen champions rise and fall, but it had never witnessed anything like this. The lead-up to the fight was nothing short of cinematic. Training camps became laboratories of innovation, each fighter adapting to bridge the gap between their respective disciplines. Ali, famously quick with his words, broke his silence with a single phrase that sent shockwaves through the sports world. "I've danced with giants. Now I'll wrestle with bears." His charisma, timeless and magnetic, drew fans from across the globe who were eager to see if the man who once floated like a butterfly could survive in the jaws of an eagle. Khabib, ever the embodiment of quiet intensity, issued no trash talk in response. His focus was absolute, his preparation meticulous. He knew better than anyone that this fight wasn't about words, it was about history. The night of the fight arrived, and with it, a tension unlike anything the world had ever experienced. Ali entered first, his walkout a tribute to his boxing roots, blending his signature swagger with the unmistakable aura of a man who had seen the world change and still believed he was its king. Khabib followed, his eyes fixed on the ground as a haunting Dagestani chant echoed through the stadium. The air seemed heavier with every step he took, as if the weight of history itself pressed down on the octagon. As the two stood face to face for the first time, the enormity of the moment was palpable. Ali's eyes held the glint of a strategist, a man who had outthought and outmaneuvered countless opponents. Khabib's gaze was unflinching, his demeanor that of a man who had honed himself to perfection through years of unrelenting discipline. The referee's instructions seemed to fade into the background as the crowd's roar built into a crescendo. This wasn't just a fight, it was the convergence of two ideologies, two philosophies of combat, distilled into a single moment. The bell rang, and the world held its breath. Ali moved first, his footwork mesmerizing, a dance that seemed almost effortless. His jabs snapped out like a piston, probing for openings, testing Khabib's defenses. But Khabib wasn't a stranger to speed or precision. He closed the distance with an almost mechanical efficiency, cutting off Ali's angles and forcing him to engage on his terms. The octagon felt smaller with every step, the space tightening as the fighters began to execute their game plans. What happened next would define the legacy of both men, but for now, it remained locked in that moment, a question lingering in the minds of everyone watching. Could Ali's mastery of distance and timing overcome Khabib's relentless pressure and unparalleled grappling? Or would the man from Dagestan impose his will, dragging the legend into deep waters where the past had no bearing? The answer was just seconds away, yet it felt like an eternity. All eyes were on the octagon, where time itself seemed to stand still, waiting to reveal who would emerge as the greatest fighter of all time. As the first round began to unfold, the energy inside the arena was palpable. Ali's fluid movements were hypnotic, his feet gliding over the canvas like they had in countless boxing rings. But this time, there were no ropes to corner him, no boundaries to dictate the flow of the fight. His arms moved like whips, jabs and feints flashing like lightning as he tested Khabib's reactions. Every punch was calculated, every step a deliberate choice to frustrate and confound the man in front of him. It was a style perfected in another era, an art form that had dazzled audiences decades ago, now reborn in a setting that seemed determined to smother it. Khabib, however, was no stranger to adversity. His entire career had been defined by overcoming opponents who were faster, stronger, or more experienced in their own domains. This was no different. He stalked Ali with the patience of a predator, his feet planted firmly on the mat, his movements unshakable. Each attempt to close the distance was met with a flash of Ali's jab, but Khabib absorbed the strikes like they were mere raindrops. His plan wasn't about landing a perfect punch or scoring quick points. It was about breaking Ali's rhythm, dismantling his game piece by piece, until there was nothing left but an opening for the inevitable takedown. The crowd was on the edge of their seats, every exchange drawing gasps and cheers. But this wasn't just a contest of physical prowess, it was a clash of mental fortitude. Ali, ever the strategist, was already adapting, realizing that his usual methods of frustrating his opponents wouldn't work on someone as relentless as Khabib. He started to circle wider, flicking out punches with less commitment, conserving energy as he worked to keep Khabib guessing. At the same time, Khabib's focus never wavered. His eyes tracked every movement, his posture low and coiled, ready to explode forward at the first sign of a mistake. The subplots of this monumental fight began to reveal themselves. In Ali's corner, his team exchanged hurried whispers, their faces betraying a mixture of awe and concern. They knew Ali was fighting on foreign ground, that his mastery of the sweet science might not be enough to withstand the unrelenting tide of Khabib's grappling if the fight hit the mat. In Khabib's corner, the energy was quieter but no less intense. His team trusted their fighter implicitly, their confidence in his training and strategy unshakable. Yet even they couldn't help but marvel at Ali's precision, his ability to make every movement look effortless despite the danger in front of him. Outside the octagon, the world was captivated. Fans debated furiously on social media, analyzing every second of the fight, as if they were witnessing history in real time, which, in a way, they were. Former fighters and analysts chimed in, some praising Ali's ability to adapt so quickly to a completely new environment, others marveling at Khabib's composure and methodical approach. The debate wasn't just about the fight itself, it was about what this clash represented. For some, it was a celebration of combat sports as a whole, a testament to the universality of competition. For others, It was a glimpse into the future, a tantalizing preview of what could happen if this time-bending technology were to become more widely used. Back inside the octagon, the tension was building. Ali's jab continued to snap through the air, but Khabib's timing was getting sharper, his movements more deliberate. He feinted a lunge, and for the briefest moment, Ali flinched. It was almost imperceptible, but to Khabib, it was a crack in the armor. He pressed forward, forcing Ali to backpedal, his footwork as smooth as ever, but now showing signs of strain. The first real clinch of the fight happened in an instant. Khabib shot in low, his arms coiling around Ali's legs like steel cables, but Ali sprawled just in time, his balance impeccable. The two men locked eyes for a fraction of a second, a silent acknowledgement of the stakes, before they broke apart. The crowd erupted, their cheers splitting down the middle. Half celebrated Ali's escape, his ability to stay upright against one of the greatest grapplers in the history of the sport. The other half roared for Khabib, whose relentless pursuit of control had turned the octagon into a battlefield of wills. The fighters circled again, the pace slowing just enough for both men to recalibrate. The clock ticked down, the seconds dragging like hours, as the first round came to a close. The bell rang, but the tension didn't dissipate. If anything, it only deepened. As the fighters returned to their corners, the cameras panned in close, capturing every bead of sweat, every deep breath. Ali's face was calm, but his eyes told a different story. He had faced some of the greatest heavyweights in history, men who could hit like freight trains and fight like demons. But Khabib was something else entirely. There was no arrogance in his gaze now, only the cold calculation of a man who knew he was in the fight of his life. Khabib, on the other hand, was a picture of focus. He listened intently to his team's advice, his breathing steady, his mind locked onto the task ahead. But beneath the surface, questions lingered. Could Ali's mastery of striking truly hold up against Khabib's relentless grappling? Could Khabib impose his will on a man whose entire career had been built on defying expectations? And what of the larger implications of this fight? As the crowd buzzed with excitement, few could ignore the deeper unease that came with watching two legends from different times collide. This was more than a fight. It was a disruption of the natural order, a bending of reality that left everyone wondering where the line between sport and spectacle truly lay. The second round loomed like a storm on the horizon, both fighters standing poised to dive back into the fray. Ali's foot tapped against the canvas, his rhythm returning, while Khabib's fingers flexed at his sides, ready to grip, to control, to dominate. The world held its breath as the seconds ticked down. What would happen next? The answer was coming, and it promised to reshape everything we thought we knew about combat, legacy, and the relentless pursuit of greatness. But for now, all anyone could do was watch and wait, the weight of the moment hanging heavy in the air. The second round began with an intensity that electrified the crowd once more. Ali, adjusting to Khabib's relentless forward pressure, started incorporating sharper angles, his footwork a dazzling display of precision. His punches came faster now, combinations laced with the same finesse that had made him untouchable in the ring decades ago. A crisp 1-2 landed clean, snapping Khabib's head back slightly, drawing a gasp from the audience. But Khabib barely flinched, his stoic demeanor unbroken. If anything, it seemed to fuel him. He closed the gap again, this time feinting a low takedown, before coming up high with a looping overhand right that narrowly missed Ali's chin. It was clear both fighters had leveled up since the first round, each probing for weaknesses, testing limits. Ali's adaptability was on full display. Despite being out of his element, he was finding ways to dictate moments of the fight, forcing Khabib to respect his striking. Yet, it was Khabib's relentlessness that made the air in the arena feel heavier with each passing second. His pursuit wasn't just physical, it was mental, a constant reminder to Ali that there was no room for complacency. Every time Ali found an opening to dance or jab, Khabib would close the distance, forcing him into positions where the octagon's vastness felt like a trap. Then came the twist, the moment no one could have predicted. As Khabib dove in for another takedown attempt, Ali pivoted, and the two fighters tangled in an exchange that sent them both stumbling toward the cage wall. But instead of breaking apart, Khabib managed to latch onto Ali's torso, his grip like iron. For the first time in the fight, the momentum shifted decisively in Khabib's favor as he drove Ali to the mat with a thunderous slam. The crowd erupted, half cheering in awe, the other half screaming for Ali to rise. But as the seconds ticked by, something extraordinary happened. Ali didn't panic. Instead, he began to use his natural athleticism and incredible spatial awareness to defend himself. On his back, a position he had likely never envisioned himself in, Ali fought with a surprising calmness. His long limbs, honed through years of boxing, allowed him to create enough distance to prevent Khabib from landing any significant damage. It wasn't elegant, it was survival. The crowd, witnessing this completely unorthodox scenario, couldn't believe their eyes. Ali, the man who had once floated like a butterfly, was now grappling with one of the greatest wrestlers in the history of combat sports and holding his own. But Khabib wasn't fazed. His strategy was unfolding as planned. He slowly inched forward, looking to isolate an arm, his movements methodical and deliberate. Ali bucked his hips, attempting to scramble free, but Khabib's weight was like an anchor, keeping him pinned. Then came the twist within the twist. Ali, using pure instinct and a surprising amount of grappling awareness, managed to twist his body and push off the cage with his feet, creating just enough momentum to stand back up. The roar from the crowd was deafening, their disbelief palpable. The impossible had happened. Ali had escaped Khabib's grasp. Both fighters stood again, breathing heavily but still locked in. The stakes felt even higher now, the fight more unpredictable than ever. Ali's face was marked with a thin sheen of sweat, his lips curling into a grin, as if to say, "Is that all you've got?" Khabib, expressionless as always, simply nodded, acknowledging the grit and resilience of his opponent. This wasn't just a battle of skills anymore. It was a test of heart, of willpower, of who could dig deeper into reserves they didn't even know they had. Outside the octagon, chaos erupted. Commentators were losing their voices trying to keep up with the action, fans were glued to their screens, and social media lit up with a frenzy of reactions. The narrative of the fight had taken an unexpected turn, and now the world was scrambling to process what it meant. The technology that had brought these two legends together had given us more than a spectacle. It had created a fight where the boundaries of possibility were being redrawn in real time. As the second round drew to a close, the fighters exchanged a flurry of strikes, each testing the limits of their endurance. Ali's jab continued to find its mark, while Khabib's pressure pushed Ali to the very edge of his stamina. The crowd was alive with energy, fully aware they were witnessing something that transcended the sport itself. But beneath the surface, questions lingered. How long could Ali hold up against Khabib's grinding pace? And could Khabib solve the puzzle of Ali's striking before time ran out? The bell sounded, signaling the end of the round, but the tension refused to dissipate. The fighters returned to their corners, their teams scrambling to patch them up, to inject fresh strategies into minds that were already consumed by the enormity of the moment. Ali, though visibly fatigued, exuded the same confidence that had made him an icon, his smile defiant, even as his body bore the marks of Khabib's pressure. Khabib, ever the enigma, sat stoically, his focus unbroken, his mind racing with calculations about what it would take to finally put Ali away. The arena buzzed with speculation, fans wondering if they'd just witnessed a turning point, or merely the calm before the storm. The answer lay in the next round, a round that promised to push both men to their limits and beyond. Whatever was coming, it felt bigger than anything that had come before. The fight was no longer just about determining the greatest. It had become a symbol of resilience, of what happens when two legends refuse to yield. The third and final round began with a tension so thick it seemed to fill every corner of the arena. Both men stepped forward, their bodies battered, but their spirits unbroken. Ali's movements, though slower now, still carried a grace that defied the fatigue etched into his frame. Khabib, relentless as ever, moved like a storm cloud, calm on the surface, but brimming with destructive potential. This was it. All the preparation, the strategy, the heart, it all came down to these final minutes. The crowd knew it, the fighters knew it, and the world watched with bated breath. Ali opened the round with a calculated barrage of punches, his jabs and hooks cutting through the air with precision. He knew Khabib would come forward, so he aimed to meet him in the middle, to keep the fight where he could use his tools most effectively. A sharp left hand connected clean, snapping Khabib's head to the side. The crowd erupted, sensing the urgency in Ali's strikes. But Khabib, as always, absorbed the punishment and pushed forward, undeterred. With every step, he closed the distance, pressing Ali against the cage, where his world began to shrink. This time, Khabib wasn't looking for a takedown right away. He leaned on Ali, forcing him to carry his weight, sapping his energy with every second. Knees and short punches landed in the clinch, and while they weren't devastating, they chipped away at Ali's reserves. The commentators noted how brilliant Khabib's strategy was. He was wearing Ali down like water carving through stone. But then, just as it seemed Khabib was gaining full control, Ali did something that no one expected. Using a combination of his experience, instinct, and sheer willpower, he slipped out of the clinch and spun away, creating just enough space to unleash a punishing uppercut that landed flush on Khabib's chin. Khabib staggered, visibly shaken for the first time in the fight. The crowd roared, sensing a possible turning point as Ali pressed forward, throwing combinations with everything he had left. The punches landed cleanly, each one a testament to the boxing legend's enduring skill. Khabib, reeling but unrelenting, managed to grab a single leg and drag Ali back to the mat in a desperate bid to regain control. The arena erupted into chaos once again. It was as if the octagon itself was alive, holding its breath for what came next. On the ground, Khabib found himself in unfamiliar territory, not as the predator, but as the hunted. Ali, with an unexpected burst of energy, used his long arms to create distance, landing awkward but effective strikes from his back. The crowd couldn't believe what they were seeing. A boxer on the ground, with one of the most dominant grapplers in history, was not only surviving, but finding moments of success. Khabib, ever the tactician, adjusted quickly, transitioning to a more secure position and raining down controlled shots. But Ali, defiant as always, refused to let the fight end here. He bridged and rolled, using every ounce of his strength to escape back to his feet. The clock ticked down, the seconds feeling like hours. Both men were utterly spent, their bodies moving on sheer willpower alone. The exchanges became slower, but no less intense, every strike and movement a gamble with everything on the line. Then, in the final minute, the moment everyone had been waiting for arrived. Khabib feinted a takedown, drawing Ali's hands low, and then exploded upward with a spinning back fist, a move so uncharacteristic of him that it caught everyone off guard. The strike clipped Ali just enough to stagger him, sending him backpedaling. But before Khabib could capitalize, Ali, using instincts honed through years of battle, planted his feet and fired a straight right hand that found its mark with pinpoint accuracy. The impact echoed through the arena like a thunderclap. Both men stood for a moment, locked in a frozen tableau, before Ali staggered forward, his legs shaky, his gas tank empty. Khabib, too, looked barely able to stand, his body leaning against the cage for support. The crowd erupted in disbelief, unsure of who had won, as the final bell rang and the fight came to an end. The fighters, exhausted and battered, were guided back to their corners, their teams rushing to attend to them. The arena was a cacophony of cheers, boos, and stunned silence. No one knew what the judges would decide, but everyone agreed on one thing. They had just witnessed something transcendent, a clash of eras, of styles, of philosophies that had delivered on every level. When the decision was announced, the result stunned everyone. It was a draw. The judges had scored the fight evenly, unable to declare a definitive winner. The crowd's reaction was mixed, some cheering for the fairness of the decision, others frustrated that there was no clear victor. But in that moment, as Khabib and Ali met in the center of the octagon, the results seemed secondary. They embraced mutual respect radiating from their battered forms. They had pushed each other to their limits and beyond, proving that greatness isn't confined to one era, one style, or one set of rules. The cameras panned to the audience, where fans, celebrities, and even other fighters stood in awe. The fight had transcended sport, becoming something much larger, a reminder of the human spirit's capacity to adapt, endure, and rise to challenges no matter how insurmountable they seem. As Ali raised Khabib's hand in a gesture of respect, and Khabib did the same for Ali, the world watched two legends share a moment of unity that no amount of competition could erase. But as the lights dimmed and the broadcast began to wind down, murmurs of speculation filled the air. Would there be a rematch? Would this clash of titans lead to a new era in combat sports, where the impossible could happen again? The questions lingered, the possibilities endless. For now, though, one thing was clear: this fight would be talked about for generations to come. It wasn't just a battle between two men. It was a story of resilience, respect, and the unyielding pursuit of greatness.